Today we get to take a quick swim in a pool that is so deep. There is so much in today's conversation with author Ian Cron that I was kind of giddy to talk about it all. Along with Suzanne Stabile, Ian Cron wrote the book titled The Road Back to You, an Enneagram Journey to Self-Discovery. It is a gem of a book, which I highly recommend that you check out. So if you're asking, why are we talking about an ancient personality typology on this podcast about bravery? Good question. We go into this in greater depth later in the conversation. But to put it bluntly and briefly, if you're going to take a big, scary leap into doing something brave, it helps to have as many tools as you can. It even helps to have those tools after the fact to understand from a new perspective why or how events or relationships in your life have unfolded. And as Ian later goes into detail, the Enneagram is not the end-all, be-all for being brave or even knowing yourself and your personality. It's just one facet. However, it is a fascinating facet, kind of like this conversation with author Ian Cron. Oh, and before I forget, we've created an awesome freebie download for this episode, and it is available in the show notes. It's all about what happens and what kind of questions you should ask yourself when you've kind of fallen on your face. It's also just a pretty great reminder of what kind of questions you should be asking when you have those recurring tapes that play over and over and over in your head. I think you know which ones I'm talking about. Okay, let's get to the episode. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. As a singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and creative entrepreneur, I encounter some really fascinating stories. I'm on a mission to reveal the depth and width of bravery and its benefits to creatives like yourself. More than ever today, our world needs bravery, unique bravery, from everyone. This is the place where you find it. There is no script or censorship today because that's how these facets of bare naked bravery are in real life. So if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. One of the easiest ways you can share bravery with the world is to send this episode to a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle is Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Again, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. Okay, Ian Cron, are you ready for some bare naked bravery?
I am incredibly ready, wonderfully ready this morning.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. So Ian Cron is all things Enneagram and more. And I have been researching Enneagram stuff and personality stuff for the last several months, more than several months, for a long while. We've talked a little bit about Myers-Briggs on some of the Peep Show episodes, the bonus episodes earlier in our seasons. And now I want to talk about Enneagram because it is near and dear to my heart. I have a lot of friends who completely nerd out on it. I've had many dinner parties where the only conversation is about Enneagram and who we think which type somebody else is and all this kind of stuff. Ian's making a funny face. And at first, when I started having those conversations, I would make those faces, but now I completely geek out on it too, because I think it really does. It's a really unique framework for how we think about the world and think about each other. So, Ian.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for being here. Do you have any, what would you tell somebody who's never heard the word Enneagram before?
What would I tell them? I tell them they best learn about it if they want to be at all engaged in a dinner party or taken seriously by groups of people who might be members of the Enneagram Taliban, of which there are so many. The Enneagram is an ancient personality typology or typing system, if you will, that suggests that there are 9 basic or core personality styles or ways of being in the world, one of which each of us gravitates towards in childhood to cope, right? As a coping strategy, as a way to navigate cultural expectations, familial expectations, get along with siblings, with peers. I like what James Hollis, the Jungian therapist, says about that part of your life, those very early years. He talks about provisional personality, right? This is the skin that we first put on to satisfy what other people expect of us so we can get our needs met, right? Mm-hmm. What the Enneagram teaches is that's good, and we need to be thankful for the personalities that we've been given. But as we get older and the early threats of childhood pass, many of the same strategies that helped us survive childhood begin to work against us in adulthood. Or as Jung said, this is a cannibalization of Carl Jung, but essentially, what saves you in the morning will kill you in evening. So that what the Enneagram teaches is that a lot of the repetitive patterns of behaviors in our lives that we say, oh my gosh, why do I do that over and over again? That's such a self-defeating, self-limiting thing to say or feel or act or do, but I can't seem to stop. It's like no matter how many times I lose a job or get rid of a relationship, it's what is going on. And I mean, everyone has this experience, right? You scratch your head and you think, what is going on that I can't? It's like I'm reading a script someone else wrote, and it's like Groundhog Day. I keep reading the same script. And nothing is changing, no matter how hard I try, how much therapy I do. And what I'm learning through the Enneagram is the key is to disidentify with those parts of our personalities that are holding us back from becoming who we really are and who we can be. And that's what the Enneagram does. It teaches you, here's what your basic core type is. Here are some strategies for letting go of those dimensions of it that are holding you back.
Yep.
I should be paid a lot of money for that proceeds right there. That was awesome.
It really was.
I was awesome just then.
It really was. I could not have done a better job. Nice.
Or a longer
amazing. I know. It would have been a lot longer explanation, but that was really fantastic. Okay, so there are 9 types. Each type has like a set of fears or like a core fear. And if you read any book on the Enneagram, what I suggest you do is read about all the types. So
I actually would suggest that you read my book.
Yes, that's true. And especially Ian's book, which is called The Road Back to You. And it's great. But I really get a lot out of reading. I really got a lot out of reading about all the types in one swoop so that then that way I could pinpoint, I really am a 4. I really am a 4, like a classic. Mm-hmm. I'm a classic artist who wants to be a special snowflake and is kind of angry about it. And all of the things that go around that get lumped around with it. And, I've had a couple friends who, when they really owned up to which type they were a little bit disappointed because I know, because I think when you're in that frame of mind of, I don't know, it has to do at which point in your life you are looking at yourself, because we can flex according to these types that are described in the Enneagram. So should we go through the 9 types really quick? But that's kind of like a cheater version too.
No. I just want to say that I meet people all the time who, when they hear their personality type, they're very like, oh, really? I'm a what? In part, that's kind of how you know your personality type. I mean, when you're going through the Enneagram and you go through a day-long workshop or my online video course and stuff like that, and people, they'll hear their number, they get the shoulder slump, and they get this kind of sinking feeling in their chest, and they're like, oh, dear. Oh, I didn't know anyone else possibly could have known that I think and feel and act that way. You know what I mean? And I just feel so outed, so exposed. And I'm like, here's the deal. There's no such thing as a monolithic self. And everybody thinks that there's okay, this is, first of all, you're not your personality. Your personality is a piece of who you are, but it isn't who you are.
I completely agree.
Yes, completely. And then secondly, it's not monolithic. It's more vaporous than it is solid. A human being doesn't have a self so much as they're selfing all the time. We're dynamic, we're fluid, we're evolving all the time. So the idea that I am a personality doesn't mean I am a house. It doesn't move, it's on a foundation, it's not going anywhere. It's like, no, actually, it's more like a river. So don't worry, you're still in process.
Totally. And I think that if you can use this monolithic description, like this one-dimensional description, as one singular way of getting a different kind of perspective on your life, on your relationships, on who you are, on how you might behave, that one new perspective might be the new perspective that you need to take the next step to do whatever you need to do.
It's a lovely gateway. And we'll jump into the types right now. Let me just say one last thing on that, because it's very, very important for people to know this. People develop strange loyalties to religions and psychological systems that they suddenly think are going to reveal to them all the secrets of the greatest mystery of their lives, which next to God is themselves. And I hate to tell you, but really, neither the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs, nor Jungian therapy or Adlerian therapy or Rogerian, I go on and on and on this, is going to plumb the depths of the mystery of who you are as a human being. And actually, it's like this guy, George Box, the statistician. He has the greatest quote ever. He says, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And I thought when I heard that, bang. I don't care if it's a theological framework. I don't care if it's psychology or sociology. The truth of the matter is all models are wrong, but some are useful. What he means is, hey, look, a Keynesian view of the economy, it's a good model, but it's useful, but it's wrong. You know, it's like, so is the Enneagram, and so is the Myers-Briggs, and so is the Minnesota multiphasic inventory. I go on and on. But they're great starting points into a conversation with the mystery of who you are.
And I would also add that, you know, in the framework of Bravery that I've discovered, there's these three main ingredients, one being vulnerability, the second being imagination, and the third being improvisation. And all three require some measure of feeling depending on which ingredient we're talking about, your constraints, the context, or the friction that's happening in the situation or within yourself.
Sure.
And I think that's where some of these personality types can come into play. It's one way of measuring the context of your situation. It's one way of looking at your own personal constraints or the constraints of a group dynamic, or it's one way of sensing the friction within a given moment. And I'm of the mindset that friction is good, especially if you know how to use it, right? So, which is why I love the Enneagram, because it is just it's a great way to do things, or it's a great way to look at things. Okay, so first of all, I'm a type 4. Should we start with 4, or should we go into numbers?
Yeah, let's go in numbers.
Okay.
And so everybody knows the numbers don't mean anything. They're not hierarchical from best to worst or worst to best. And I'm going to start at 2 because it's easier to understand them as triads, right? There are 3 sets of 3 numbers in each, and they all have some commonalities. And this might help people if I do it starting with 2. Okay.
Sure.
So 2, 3, 4 is in the heart or feeling triad, meaning that these people, all 3 of the numbers 2, 3, and 4, are deeply and profoundly influenced by feelings, right? We would say that they're people of the heart, right? They're heart-centered people. 2s are called the givers. They have a need to be needed. I'm going to go through these real fast, okay?
Mm-hmm. Good.
3s are called the performers. They have a need to succeed. 4s are called the romantic, or sometimes they're called the individualist. They have a need to be unique and special. Now we're into the head triad, or the thinking, mentally centered triad, 5, 6, and 7. 5s are called the investigators, sometimes the observers. They have a need to know or to understand. 6s are called the loyalists. They are motivated by a need to feel safe and secure. 7s are called the enthusiasts. They are motivated by a need to avoid psychological, emotional pain. Now we're into the anger triad. Now, again, anger really, like fear and shame does for those other 2 sets of triads. Anger colors the water inside of a person in this triad's interior space. So 8s are called a challenger. They have a need to be strong and to avoid revealing vulnerable feelings, softer qualities. 9s are called the peacemakers. They have a need to avoid conflict at all costs. And 1 are called the reformers. I used to call them perfectionists, and I just can't stand that word. So I've decided to go to calling them the reformers, but they do have a need to be perfect, to perfect themselves, to perfect others, and to perfect the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was the quickest overview. And I'm so excited because now we have so much time to talk about all the good stuff. Well, I think, if you guys are interested in any of this, again, please read Ian's book about all of this. He does a phenomenal job of describing it. Here's my question, Ian. When you encounter all of these people from all these different buckets of types or numbers, what have you noticed about bravery or setting out to do something difficult amongst these types?
This is such a great question, because normally I don't get questions like this. And I've done, in the last 90 days, I've probably done 75 podcasts, literally, maybe more. Yeah, probably 75 podcasts. So you're asking me some really good 4-ish questions.
Thank you.
So I think regardless of type, this is where we start to get down into the mystery of human beings. Mm-hmm. Right? People are not predictable. This is where the Enneagram and things, people will surprise us. And this is where soul comes in. This is why mothers get to lift cars off of babies who can't put 2 words together. They're so shy in every other context. It's like we have these strange, anomalous, soulish kinds of behaviors. And can I introduce another idea that I think is important here? And then I'll answer your question in the way I think you want me to. But I want to say this.
Well, you can answer it however you want to answer it.
Yeah, but people want to hear about types. I will talk about types, but we're talking about human beings, and I can't dumb it down.
Yeah.
So personality is a good thing to know about. It's a means to an end. It's not the end itself. Mm-hmm. And people tend to get stuck on it because it's the most useful socially, and it's the most useful thing to focus on. It fascinates us. It's like, oh, well, this is why it explains what. I've been thinking a lot lately about this, because I think, okay, well, so what? You know what your personality is. That doesn't tell you anything about how to change it, how to love it, how to be it's a big deal. It doesn't solve anything. And the thing it doesn't do is talk about character. Mm-hmm. And personality and character are 2 very different things. Mm-hmm. And so knowing your personality is a stepstone to dealing with character, that's useful. If it's just, I just want to know myself better and know other people better, okay, pretty good, but not very, kind of selling it short, ultimately, spiritually speaking.
Whenever somebody says character to me, I always smirk and also roll my eyes, because you guys, just as a background, my dad would wake me up on Saturday mornings at like 7 a.m. and go, "It's time for character building." And he meant mowing the lawn in Texas before it got hot. Right?
Oh.
Yeah. So whenever I think of building character, I automatically equate it to doing something really difficult and something you really don't want to do. And to some extent, my dad's correct, but I also wanted to give you some background to why I'm responding the way that I did.
Yeah, well, I don't know why character has fallen out of fashion, except that you can be any number on the Enneagram, and of all those numbers I just said, but if you lack character, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Every single one of those, that's why I tell people who want to use the Enneagram for human resources, like they'll try and hire me, sometimes for dumb money, to say, we want to use the Enneagram in human resources. I go, don't, hire people who are competent. And then what you really want to know isn't, yes, use it as a data point, but honestly, it doesn't matter if you hire a 1 to be your bookkeeper if they steal stuff.
Right.
If they're people who don't have good character, you're screwed anyhow. So character trumps personality any day of the week.
Oh, yeah.
So can I just say character trumps personality? Because if I did, I'm really tense about it. I don't use the word Trump very often anymore. Now, every time I do, I go, did I just say something wrong? Okay. So,
it's happening. I would also say that, character trumps personality. And I think our environment is also a really huge factor in all of this as well. So,
yeah. Lots come into play.
Your previous environment and your current environment.
Well, we have a lot of forces that press down on us in life that shape the way that we think, act, and feel in different situations. And maybe bravery is the capacity to see that which is right, that which is the right thing to do, and to do it despite the torrent of messages and programmed behaviors that would tell us to do one thing and we choose to do another in the interest of the right. That's brave. That's Rosa Parks brave. To say, I have been identified as a second-class human being. I have been treated like, and all these messages, all these beliefs, all this, and I'm not getting off this damn bus. I am not moving my seat. Now that's bravery because of your capacity to push back against perhaps your own nature, your cultural expectations. And you're right, within each type, they would face different kinds of challenges. Like, a challenger would have done that at 8 years old. You know what I mean? Like, that's natural behavior to a challenger, an 8 on the Enneagram. This is wrong. I have no fear. This is injustice. I am standing up. I'm sitting here, and you'll have to burn the bus down before I get off. Okay. Now, for a 9, a peacemaker who wants to avoid conflict at all costs, that's courage. That's bravery to say, no, I'm not moving. And all 9 numbers, we have to remember on the Enneagram, have different underlying motivations. You can't judge or determine a person's personality by traits because we all have all of these traits available to us. It's really what motivates your behavior and how it differentiates from other people, right? So the reason an 8 would stay on the bus is because they hate injustice. Or the reason an 8 would stay on with Rosa Parks is because the 8 always believes in defending underdogs, right? The reason a 3 would stay on might be because it represented, this would be an unhealthy 3, it represented an opportunity to advance their own interests of being admired by staying on the bus, and I go through all 9 numbers. These underlying motivations under the waterline material is what really matters. So everybody has to overcome in different contexts and situations the particularities of their histories, and what might be an everyday thing for one number, not a big deal for another, is terrific courage.
Which I think is part of the, we often see or talk about bravery in terms of like Rosa Parks or pulling a child out of a burning building kind of thing. And if you talk to the guy that just pulled a child out of the burning building, if he's a firefighter, he's going to go, yeah, that's my job. Like, of course I did that. That's my job. If you're talking with a guy who, just a citizen walking down the road, his response might be, well, that's just the right thing to do, right? And so your own context, your own environment, your own presence in a situation might change your reaction or your reasoning for why you would do something crazy and bold. We are doing a 5-day bravery challenge starting May 15th, and I'm so excited about it. I want to make sure you get signed up. That is, if you are up for the challenge. And what is the bravery challenge? I'm glad you asked. Here is how it will go this time around. It might be different in the future, but this time around, individually, I'm asking each challenger to pick a specific area of life, business, or creativity. Basically, it's an area that you need to be brave in, and it can be really specific. So this could be sending those 15 booking requests to venues that you've been seriously avoiding. It could be finally getting around to doing your taxes. This could be knowing that you have some really difficult and brave conversations coming up. It could even be as simple as doing a different kind of exercise for the week just to mix things up and experience something different and something new. Your bravery could even be getting back online and going on a date, and it could terrify you, or it could be really pretty much a baby step. But whatever you choose, big or small, as a group with all the other challengers, we'll go together, we'll go through some of the basics of bravery together. Each of the 5 days will have really simple assignments aimed at exploring and building bravery in your chosen area. And what you'll find in doing these little baby mini steps individually and then at the same time as other folks, those baby steps will be easier and easier, and I promise by the end of the week, you'll have a much better understanding of how you can be brave and apply this bravery in a really tangible way to a really tangible area of your life too. Participation in the challenge is free. However, signups for this time around will close on May 14th, so I want to make sure you get in on the list while you can. Just go to barenakedbravery.com/challenge before May 14th. And if you're listening to this episode after May 14th, go ahead and get on the list for the challenge next time around. Again, you can go to barenakedbravery.com/challenge, and I will see you in there.
So one of the nice things about the Enneagram, unlike these other models, personality typology, is it takes into account that the human personality is dynamic. It's not static, right? So the MBTI or the DISC or StrengthsFinder, these are all great instruments for sure if they're used correctly, but they tend to box people, right? That this is who you are. And the Enneagram goes, no. That's not who you are. You're more dynamic than that. So if you're a 4, the Enneagram would say, when you're doing well, when everything's going great in your life, you start to act like a healthy 1. That's why you have all these graphs and arrows going around the Enneagram for those who have seen it. So when a 4 is doing well, they stop fantasizing these romantic fantasies about my ideal soulmate, the ideal job, the ideal therapist or church. And, oh, look at you, you're blushing.
I know, I'm blushing super hard.
Right?
Because he's totally got me pegged.
And getting all angsty and lost in fantasies of great projects and openings at the MoMA, can't wait to do it, But when they get healthy and get out of their imaginations and dwelling on the past and what if, they go over to 1, the perfectionist, and start getting crap done.
It's so true.
They stop thinking about it and they start doing it. They make the record they're saying they're going to make. They're going to finish the book of poetry. They're going to open the florist store. Whatever your thing is, you're going to do it and you do it. When you're unhealthy, the Enneagram says you would go to the low side of 2, the giver, where you would start to feel resentful that other people weren't paying attention to your contribution, that people didn't see you as being, bringing your unique, on and on and on.
Yeah.
The point is that we change contextually. The human personality is adaptable, right? It isn't static. Who you are in a horrible place like Mosul this morning, it's very different than you would be if you were in Beverly Hills. The same person in those two contexts would be their personalities would be utterly different operatively, right? Mm-hmm. And it's important to know that, lest you unconsciously limit yourself to the confines of what you think you typically do in any situation.
Right. What would you say to someone who has responded to a situation in a way that they are not proud of?
Great question. Well, it depends. Now you're speaking to me not as a therapist, but as I'm an Episcopal priest and a spiritual director, and so I wear different hats with different people. I believe that love is the most powerful force in the universe. I really do. Sounds romantic, may sound ideal, particularly in the current age, but I do. I also think that neck and neck with it is shame. I think shame is the second most powerful force in the universe in a weird way, and I could unpack that more, but I believe that human transformation is most apt to occur. The natural climate for you, like I say it that way for it, is compassion. The first reflex people have when they've done something for which they're not proud is they default to shame. And shame is a reflex. It's just in the human. It's actually, I've been studying brain science the last year, and it's just in our brain, okay, as well as in our souls, And I try to get people out of the shame space because shame is not our friend. I like what Pema Chodron calls unconditional self-friendship. Mm-hmm. We have to maintain a posture of unconditional self-friendship before we can deal with the things that we've done, for which we're not proud. To recognize that we're human beings and We have capacities to do things that are terrible sometimes. But if we try to use shame to root it out, it actually only buries it deeper. So it's really compassion and truth and light that brings healing to people.
Mm-hmm. I concur. I see that a lot in the marketing clients or the creative entrepreneurs that I end up working with. And then also within even fellow singer-songwriters and all of that, that when you're doing something, even if it's when you've done something that you're not proud of, be it whatever severity of the consequence we're talking about, like either sending an email you probably shouldn't have, or making a face on stage that you shouldn't have, or messing up, like just making an accident. The way you respond to yourself often ends up opening doors to situations, and it ends up opening doors to places that you don't ultimately want to go.
Yeah. So I guess what I would say to you is people need to pay attention to what they pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, if I were your counselor or spiritual director, I'd say, well, why did it upset you or surprise you that you did that? Like, what is behind your surprise? What were you expecting? We don't interrogate our kind of questions that we have, the way that we see the world. We tend to see surfaces, not interiors of things. And so one of the gifts of the Enneagram for me has been, along with a regular meditation practice, has been the capacity to step back in a given moment and observe myself when I'm feeling, let's say, shame or joy, not so much quote unquote positive feelings, but what we call afflictive emotions. I sort of step back and I go, with compassionate eyes, a very compassionate gaze, nothing prosecutorial about it. I just step back and I go, so right now you're feeling ashamed for having done or said X, Y, and Z on that podcast, right? Or you talked too much, or you talked too fast. I mean, shame is always in the water somewhere, always, particularly for 2s, 3s, and 4s. And so to step back and say, okay, in a spirit of unconditional self-friendship, what was going on there? You know what? I don't know, I guess. I felt like that. Okay, so that's the story you're believing right now. That people who talk too fast on podcasts are idiots. And then I ask myself, is that true? And well, I don't know. Okay, is it really true? And then I always ask the third question to myself, which is, what would your life be like if you just stopped believing that story? That story that people who talk too fast on podcasts are idiots. And then I go, I would be able to get on with my morning in a much better spirit, or I would just be a kinder, more compassionate toward people who talk too much or too fast. Do you know what I mean? And I would just be able to go, okay, I'm going to let that go now and move on.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there are degrees of difficulty depending on the situation, but every number needs to know on the Enneagram what their wiring is like so that they can begin to ask themselves those precise questions. So almost like every number on the Enneagram tells a story that people inhabit. The story of the perfectionist, the romantic, the investigator. And to be able to pull back and say, is that story true? Is that story life-giving, or is it a story that got me through a very early stage of development that if I stay there, I'm living inside a box that's invisible, and I can't grow up. So to question and interrogate your stories on a regular basis, like a couple of times a day, is a good thing.
And just to reiterate those questions were, is it true?
Yeah.
Is it really true? And what would it be like if I stopped?
Yeah, the first one would be, actually, and by the way, I want to credit two people who've really helped me formulate those questions. One is Tara Brack, and the other one is Byron Katie.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one would be, what story am I living in right now? Right? Like, what narrative is now loose in my noggin? What movie am I making in my brain right now? And then I'm in. You know what I mean? And I've always seemed to fall into, right? Which is, let's say you were a 6. Oh yeah, I'm the loyalist who was always anxious about the worst case scenario. It's coming around the bend. Oh my gosh. And there I did it again. I made an idiot out of myself by showing up at that party with lots of whatever. You ask yourself, so what story am I believing right now? And you must ask it compassionately. You must. You cannot ask that question in a voice that's finger wagging or unkind. You have to be able to step back as almost a disinterested observer. And you step back and you go, what story are you in right now? And you have to think about it. See, because these things are reflexive. They've been reflexive your whole life. You have to step back and go, oh, I'm in the story of I need safety and security. And if I don't have it, the world will fall apart if I don't feel safe and secure. I'm talking about a 6, right? Mm-hmm. And then you say, is it true? If you're not safe, if you don't feel safe and secure all the time, that the world is going to, and you stop and you go, well, it feels like it is. That's often what people will say. And then you say, no, I didn't ask you that. Is it really true? Like, italicized really, And then they go, well, I'm not sure. And then you go, well, what would your life be like if it wasn't true? What if, in fact, you were a far more courageous and resilient human being than you know? How would your life be different? And it's amazing how the imagination can heal, because when you begin to envision, like I would stop showing up at my kids' pool parties with like defibrillator paddles and 60 life jackets for everybody. Maybe I could have one more margarita and not worry that, whatever. It's like my life would be, I would experience more interior freedom. And that's what spirituality should do.
Mm-hmm. So, Ian, just so you know, sometimes we make brave takeaways from every episode, and I think that's a perfect brave takeaway. So I'm going to put those questions on a card. Yes. and have it available for people to download it and like put it on a mirror or in your car. Sure. Or whatever.
Sure. Just as long as you make sure that the attributions are correct.
Yes.
It's from my book, The Road Back to You. Actually, I could have walked you through a different version of it, but just if you could, well,
of course.
It's on the podcast, so that's fine. As long as people knew that
of course.
It wasn't all mine.
And those two ladies are fantastic also. So I'm happy to give them attributions. So let's come back a little bit to less shame realm thing. Veer into the joy and the like when things are going well. And how does each, or not each specific Enneagram type, but how can our types change based on when things are going well? Do they all veer in one direction?
No, they go in different directions. We move around the Enneagram and take advantage of resources that different numbers have to help us in moments of stress and security. So, as I mentioned, a 4 would go to 1 in security and start to do some stuff that looks kind of 1-ish. You might even start to look and act like a 1. People will be like, you're not a 4, you're a 1. You're like, no, I'm a 4 who's getting my job done today. Does that make sense?
Oh, it's definitely, happened to me. People are like, you don't seem like yourself today. Yes, because I'm getting shit done.
That's right, exactly. So we the whole menu of characteristic traits of each individual type is available to everybody. We just have a default story that we go back to almost gravitationally over and over and over again. And when we're healthy, I think we are people that, and full of joy, is when we have the freedom to let go of that one type that we have an arthritic grip on like this, like our hands are just squeezing onto that one type that helped us get through childhood. And if we could just let go of it and our hands opened up, then all of a sudden, all the gifts of the other types would become more available to us. You see that? As long as we're holding on to that one distorted world, if we can just open up our hands and go, at any given moment, I have access to all of these wonderful traits of these different numbers. And I think wherever there's freedom and things aren't locked up inside, that's where you're most apt to find joy. Mm-hmm. Freedom and joy, these go together. And that might be as efficient or an economical an answer as I can give you to that question.
No, hey, that works so great. Okay, so let's do one last question before we wrap things up. What is challenging you personally most right now in regards to the Enneagram? Sorry, that's a whammy of a question. I apologize.
No, it's a great one. I do meet a lot of people who, and I get it at first, who get enamored with systems. They are people who typically are pretty desperate. And that's a lot of people. That's not a put down on anybody, to make sense of their lives. They don't understand who they are, why they do the things they do and feel and think. And they're trying to work out histories that are confusing. And it's, being human is glorious and it's hard. Mm-hmm. But usually, I don't think the Enneagram is the be all, the end all answer. I think it's a fascinating conversation piece, but it's not the whole piece.
Right.
I'm always pushing back against limitations of things and trying to open up the aperture to see what else can be included that can help us on the journey toward not just self-discovery, because at the end of the day, that's kind of boring. Besides, you're never really going to find yourself because yourself is always moving. I mean, it's like that's, it's not like, oh, I found Oz, So I think that for me, I'm already, even when I was in the middle of writing the book, I was already on to the next book in my head, which is beyond the Enneagram. Like what else, what is this larger conversation about who we are? Here's one tool on the tool belt, but I'm always saying, oh, wait a minute, that I've now found that. So now it's opening up the sky to me to other ideas and to other writers and other thinkers whose work would complement and adrenalize what I've learned from the Enneagram. So that's always the big challenge, for me, is to stay still. I'm a perpetual kind of wanderer looking for all things that would help me and others live more courageously, more enjoying more wholeness in the world.
Yeah, I think we would all be in a much better place if we were all doing the same thing.
Yeah, me too.
So cheers to that. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
As we mentioned earlier in the episode, your brave takeaway from today's show is a put it on the mirror card with those 4 questions that Ian mentioned from Byron Katie and Tara Brock. It, along with the rest of the links to check out Ian's book and other ways to connect with Ian, are available in the show notes for this episode. Just go to barenakedbravery.com and there's a little search bar and you just type in Ian and this episode will pop right up. We would love to hear all about your favorite parts of today's Bare Naked Bravery. You can find Ian Cron and myself on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that. Just go ahead and tag us in any posts so that we can hear and see and cheer you on and see what you're up to. If you have enjoyed listening to this episode as much as Ian and I enjoyed making it for you, then please give us a review and rate the show in your iTunes desktop app or on your podcast app in your phone. One of our listeners from the US, Calvin, recently left us a review on iTunes and said, "Emily is such a great soul and host and gets the best stories out of the people she talks to. I'm so glad for this podcast. It's the most raw, natural, real, inspiring podcast I've seen in a long time, and the guests are fantastic. Thank you so much, Emily." Calvin, that makes my heart burst open and spill into a little puddle on the floor. Thank you. All this bravery deserves to be spread as far and as wide as possible, and you guys are all a part of that. So I really do appreciate you passing on an episode, even just one episode, to a friend who you think might really get a kick out of it or need it, If you are digging the music in today's episode, that is because it's brought to you by my friends at Music Box Licensing, a premier music creative agency dedicated to finding and crafting unique soundtracks. To find out more about all the other artists and musicians and other sponsors of the show, please visit barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. I'm super looking forward to being with you next week. We have some awesome things in store for you, as always. And until then, as always, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself, be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.